Keijo, or as also known as a hip whip girl. It's a sports anime having to deal with girls trying to knock each other off of a platform in the middle of a pool. They're not allowed to use their hands or feet, so they have to be very creative on how their tactics are for knocking the other person out. The main character of this series is Nozomi, and she is very relatable. She is a former gymnast, so she has an athletic advantage in a sense. And she doesn't want to play Keijo for honor or for family. She wants to play it for money. She wants to be the richest Keijo player in the world, and I can admire that. Along with her story, of course, she has her best friend Sayako, who is a former judo champion, and her father teaches judo. He's a sensei. And of course, he disapproves of her and everything. But you gotta admire her drive from switching from one championship to the other. Then you meet two other girls, Kazane and Non, and they want to be Keijo players to kind of bring more respect to their villages. Like, one of them wants to show that even people with her kind of southernistic dialect could be a great player, and the other one is realizing that her village is falling low on popularity, so she wants to bring that back by becoming a Keijo player. Of course, they beat nothing on my two favorite girls. The first one being Mio, who is a half Japanese student and is very into her classmate. And the other one being Kotone, who is a fujoshi in the best way possible. She's the most relatable character in this whole series. She listens to audiobooks of course, boys love. A lot of the other characters think she's disinterested or that she might be too good for it, but if anything, she's just enjoying herself. And if it's anyone, I admire the shit out of that. Of course, the school that they go to that teaches Keijo is run by former winners. Their teacher is one of the former first Keijo players and the prize queen, who was known as the alluring siren. I mean, now she's a little much older, a little bit heavier on the weight, but she used to be the bombshell who would rule. And may I admire this anime, first off, for having so many different types of women. I hate it when people say that there are no anime out there that represent any type of women in more than just either moe or super voluptuous. I have to disagree. This anime is amazing. It's got big, strong women. It's got tiny little petite ones. I mean, just having the teacher alone be a more fuller woman is incredible. Like, one of the girls is super masculine looking with short hair. One of the other girls looks like she might have crawled out of JoJo for some reason. And there's another one who literally has long hair and a ponytail, but she's ripped to shit. I love it. And there is literally a massive woman of, I'm not just talking height, I mean, like, she's huge. And she's also a Keijo player. I love that there are all these different types of women in a single show. I don't understand why people shit on this show so much. I get it, it's one of those shows that you do have to turn your brain off at some point to enjoy. But once you realize that it is a sports anime that's just poking fun at itself and it's full of fan service, you're gonna have to either turn off your brain or you will not enjoy this series at all. I'll also give this show a lot of points for being very creative on how their attacks are. Like, each girl has their own special technique, or they have special abilities, or things that could counter one girl's attack compared to another. And here's just a compilation of some of them that I enjoyed throughout the series. I also really enjoy how sportsmanship this show is, first off. It's not very pitted up against each other. Like, most of us have seen those sports shows or movies where obviously the good guys are good because they're the underdog, and yet the opposite team, because they were either trained better or taught to fight better, are the enemies and they're all evil or corrupt in some way. Not here. I mean, one of the teams that they fight at the championship to become official players, one of the main girls, who obviously looks very evil, her mother's the coach. And even though they lose, instead of being like most shows where she's going to get punished, no. Her mother gives her a huge hug and tells her, if anything, she's very proud of her and that she did her best. I admire that so much. I hardly ever see that. Then again, it is anime and they do give it a huge leeway, so I'm going to give it a little bit less credit. I also would like to go ahead and say that I enjoy how they show the systemic split between the school, like those who are obviously a little less skilled eat on a bottom floor with like less variety of food, yet those who are obviously the best of the best are literally eating the floor above them with an abundance of food. Like, there's so much variety for them to choose from. There are people they're waiting them hand and foot because they are the best players. And those of us who have ever been to school know for a fact that those athletic teams were like that. At least in my school, that's how the athletes were treated. They were the best thing that could have ever happened to the school, while the rest of us were not as lucky. I also really enjoy that with Sayaka, that her father does realize that it is still a sport and she was willing to put herself through it. And he really notices that when people are cheering for her and telling her not to give up, that he's like, oh, well, I shouldn't have been an asshole. And I also do like the fact that when one of these girls does an illegal move, they get reprimanded for it. For example, the titty hypnosis that Mio pulls. That is apparently a big illegal move because obviously during hypnosis, people are caught off guard and they can easily be knocked out. She gets reprimanded for it. And same thing, when they do a move that is very harsh on the body, they let them know that that is going to physically hurt you and maybe even take you out of the sport entirely. That is amazing for a sports anime, to acknowledge that the shit that you do to your body will fuck you up in the end. I like how for these classes, they also teach them what happens to your body after all the training, let alone what could happen to it from what you do. They also go ahead and do push the girls to do a lot of exercise, a lot of, obviously, chin-ups, a lot of movement having to do with their hips and their buttocks. I also enjoy how professional the coaches are at the end of the competition. They're not duking it out, they're not arguing with each other, they are enjoying each other's company and talking to each other. That blows my fucking mind because that doesn't happen much often either in sports-related shenanigans. I would also like to say that some of the exercises that they do are somewhat realistic. I mean, if you're going to be working a lot on your hips and your glutes, you have to do a lot of exercise to strengthen those. It's very smart to show that for you to exercise on these things and strengthen them, you have to work them out rigorously. I honestly would recommend this show for shits and giggles. I recommend it in the sense of it being a lot of fun. But if you take your sports anime a little too seriously, then I would give it a pass.